£6 billion. That is the amount of used coffee grounds the United States alone sends into landfills every single year. Enough to fill a long convoy of garbage trucks stretching from New York City all the way to Los Angeles and then back again. Most of those grounds vanish inside sealed plastic bags, buried under layers of everyday household trash, breaking down slowly in airless darkness, where they do absolutely nothing for anyone. Not for the soil, not for the garden, not for the earth they originally came from. Meanwhile, just outside the kitchen door, garden soil sits there compacted, tired, depleted, and quietly starving for exactly the type of nutrition those thrown-away grounds could have provided. But here is the part almost nobody talks about. When used coffee grounds touch living garden soil, they begin a chain reaction so powerful that within 30 days the ground beneath them goes through a measurable biological transformation. The bacteria change. The structure of the soil shifts. Earthworms begin moving in from across the yard. And the garden growing above starts showing results that no bag of store-bought fertilizer has ever truly been able to copy. This is not just a recycling trick. This is not some feel-good kitchen hack. This is a 30-day biological event, and it comes with a twist that most gardeners, even experienced ones with decades of dirt under their fingernails, never see coming. The great acidity myth, and why even experienced gardeners still get it wrong. Ask almost any seasoned gardener about using coffee grounds in the garden, and the answer usually comes back immediately. They are very acidic, so only use them around acid-loving plants like blueberries, azaleas, and hydrangeas. This advice has been passed over backyard fences, quietly shared across nursery counters, and repeated in gardening magazines, blogs, and columns for nearly half a century. And at first, it sounds completely logical. After all, coffee itself is acidic. Plenty of people over 50 have had to switch to gentler, low-acid roasts just to keep their stomach calm in the morning. So the grounds left behind must be tiny, concentrated packets of acid, right? That assumption feels airtight, and it is completely wrong. Here is the science that changes everything. The acidic compounds found inside coffee beans are highly water-soluble. When hot water passes through those grounds during the brewing process, it pulls almost all of that acidic content out and carries it directly into the cup. The coffee sitting in the mug is acidic, absolutely. But the used grounds left behind in the filter, when tested with a standard soil pH meter, usually show a reading around 6.5 to 6.8. For comparison, a pH of 7.0 is considered perfectly neutral, neither acidic nor alkaline. That means used coffee grounds sit so close to neutral that the difference is practically meaningless in a real garden environment. They will not burn acid-sensitive perennials. They will not suddenly change the chemistry of a raised bed or container planter. And they will not magically turn hydrangea flowers from pink to blue, no matter how many scoops you mix into the soil around them. Living soil itself works like a powerful natural buffering system. It is constantly adjusting, resisting sudden chemical changes, and maintaining a stable, welcoming environment for the enormous community of organisms living inside it. So the single most repeated piece of coffee ground advice in the gardening world, the one trusted and passed down for generations, turns out to be based on a basic misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding has kept millions of home gardeners from using a free, effective, and genuinely powerful soil amendment that was sitting on their kitchen counter every single morning, waiting to be put to work. But correcting the acidity myth is only the opening scene of a much bigger story, because the real drama begins the moment those grounds touch the dirt. And the first 7 days underground are nothing short of a biological war zone. The 30-day underground drama, a timeline almost nobody warned you about. Picture this. A handful of dark, damp coffee grounds is scattered over the surface of a garden bed and gently raked into the top inch of soil. To the human eye, nothing happens. The garden looks the same. The soil feels the same. But beneath the surface, invisible, silent, and already speeding up, a countdown has started. And the events that unfold over the next 30 days will permanently change the composition and structure of that ground. Used coffee grounds are not empty waste. They are a real nutritional payload. Laboratory analysis consistently places their nitrogen content at around 2% by weight, similar to many commercial animal manures. They also contain useful traces of phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and copper. But unlike the synthetic fertilizers sold in bright plastic bottles at the hardware store, the ones that hit plants with a sudden artificial chemical spike and then wash into streams and groundwater within days, coffee grounds release their nutrients slowly, steadily, and organically. The soil is fed over time, and the waterways stay cleaner. Day 1 through day 7 is the invasion phase. The coffee grounds enter the soil with a carbon to nitrogen ratio hovering around 20:1, a balance microbiologists consider almost ideal for fast microbial colonization. Within hours of touching moist soil, billions of bacteria and fungi detect the new food source and begin multiplying at an astonishing, almost explosive speed. Every square centimeter of soil around the coffee particles turns into a dense feeding zone of furious biological activity. But this is where the story takes its darker turn. The plot twist that catches even veteran gardeners completely off guard. To break down the complex proteins and organic compounds locked inside coffee grounds, those rapidly multiplying microbes need extra energy. And they take it by force. They pull available nitrogen straight out of the surrounding soil to power their own digestive process. In soil science, this process has a name: nitrogen immobilization. And for the gardener who does not understand it, the visible results can look like disaster. Between day 7 and day 21, the nitrogen robbery reaches its peak. Plants growing directly above this underground heist may begin showing distress signals. Older leaves can develop a faint yellowish tone as the plant starts moving its shrinking nitrogen reserves around. Overall growth slows down. The garden may look tired, pale, washed out, even sickly. A gardener who does not know what is happening below the surface could easily panic, blame the coffee grounds, dig them out of the bed, and swear never to use them again. That would be the worst possible decision, because the payoff is only a few days away. By day 25 to day 30, the climax of this underground saga arrives. The enormous microbial population that feasted on the coffee grounds reaches its natural peak and then begins to crash. Billions of microscopic organisms die off and start decomposing. As their cells break apart, they release all of that stored nitrogen back into the soil. But here is the critical detail. The nitrogen returns in a different form. It has been converted into inorganic molecules, ammonium and nitrate, which are the exact chemical forms plant roots absorb most efficiently. So the temporary robbery does not simply end. It ends with a deposit much larger than the original balance. And, at the very same time, something even more remarkable happens to the physical texture of the soil itself. During the entire feeding frenzy, those billions of active microbes release sticky biological compounds known to scientists as extracellular polymeric substances. Think of them as microscopic glue. Natural adhesives created as a byproduct of microbial digestion. These compounds bind loose, powdery, disconnected soil particles together into stable clumps, called water-stable aggregates. Hard, compacted, seemingly lifeless dirt begins to soften and breathe. The texture slowly shifts towards something darker, spongier, and beautifully crumbly. The kind of soil that holds on to precious moisture during a brutal July heatwave, yet still drains cleanly and quickly when a heavy summer thunderstorm rolls in. The entire transformation takes roughly 30 days from beginning to end. The soil that comes out of this process is structurally, chemically, and biologically different from the soil that went in. And all it cost was a handful of used grounds from the morning coffee pot. But while bacteria have been fighting their nitrogen war near the surface, another, quieter movement has been happening for days. Something has been traveling through the dirt from every corner of the yard, drawn by the unmistakable presence of coffee. The earthworm effect. Nature's underground engineers arrive. If there is one creature that separates tired, compacted, lifeless dirt from the kind of rich, dark, productive garden soil that makes neighbors stop and ask questions over the fence, it is the earthworm. And very few substances on Earth attract earthworms with the same speed and intensity as used coffee grounds. Night crawlers, red wigglers, common garden worms of every variety. They all respond to coffee grounds in the soil with surprising urgency and purpose. But the reason is not what most people think. It has nothing to do with caffeine. It has nothing to do with a chemical stimulant or an aromatic attraction. The answer is purely mechanical. Earthworms have no teeth. To process the organic matter they consume, they depend entirely on a powerful muscular organ called a gizzard. It is the same kind of internal grinding chamber birds use to crush seeds. The gizzard needs a constant supply of tiny, rough, abrasive particles to work properly. Grit that can physically grind organic material down into a digestible paste. The fine, slightly coarse texture of used coffee grounds provides exactly that mechanical help. For an earthworm, coffee grounds are not food in the traditional sense. They are the perfect digestive tool. Within days of coffee grounds entering garden soil, earthworm activity in the treated area measurably increases. They travel surprising distances through the ground, moving toward the material with a biological efficiency researchers are still trying to fully understand. As they feed and burrow, they pull coffee grounds deeper underground, creating an expanding network of narrow tunnels. Those tunnels become highways for oxygen and channels for rainwater. They carry both vital resources far below the surface, reaching root zones. That compacted soil had been slowly choking off for years, sometimes even decades. And what earthworms leave behind may be more valuable than anything they consume. When coffee grounds pass through the full digestive tract of an earthworm, the material mixes with the worm's own natural enzymes and internally absorbed minerals. The resulting waste product, known as worm castings, is one of the most nutrient-dense natural soil amendments in existence. And laboratory analysis has revealed a surprising chemical detail. Worm castings produced from a diet heavily supplemented with coffee grounds can register an alkaline pH ranging from 8.5 to 9.0. That alkaline reading naturally counterbalances any tiny trace of residual acidity that may have remained in the original grounds. Through digestion alone, the earthworm helps neutralize the chemistry. So the system builds on itself in layers. The coffee grounds feed the bacteria and fungi. The microbes rebuild the soil's physical texture. The earthworms aerate the ground, fertilize it with castings, and help rebalance its pH toward a healthier range. Each organism plays a specific, irreplaceable role in a layered biological process that no synthetic product on a garden center shelf has ever been able to duplicate. Everything so far has sounded encouraging, a story of quiet, powerful transformation. But the next chapter comes with a serious warning, and ignoring it can cause real, visible damage to a garden. The dark side of the roast, a warning every gardener needs to hear. The internet is filled with cheerful blog posts, Pinterest graphics, and enthusiastic videos telling gardeners to scatter unlimited coffee grounds over every flower bed, vegetable row, and container planter they own. Very few of those sources stop long enough to explain what can happen when coffee grounds are used carelessly, in excess, or in the wrong place. And what happens is not small. It can be genuinely destructive. Coffee trees did not develop caffeine as a gift to tired humans. They engineered it over millions of years of slow, relentless evolution as a sophisticated chemical weapon designed to remove competition. In botanical science, caffeine belongs to a group of compounds called allelopathic substances. An allelopathic compound is one a plant produces specifically to poison the soil around itself, suppressing seed germination and slowing root development in competing plants trying to grow nearby. In the wild, this invisible chemical warfare gives the coffee tree a major territorial advantage. In a home garden, when used without understanding, it can become a real threat. Even after a complete brewing cycle, a meaningful amount of caffeine can remain trapped inside used coffee grounds. The exact amount depends on the brewing method. Espresso grounds usually hold on to far more caffeine than standard drip filter grounds, but the compound is still present, and it is still biologically active. If fresh, uncomposted coffee grounds are spread directly over newly planted vegetable seeds or piled around the base of young, recently transplanted seedlings, the caffeine begins working against them. Published research has shown that caffeine interferes with cellular division in developing root tips. That is the exact tissue a young plant depends on to anchor itself into the soil and absorb water and nutrients. The result can be stunted, weakened, and in some vulnerable species, fatal growth. Clover and alfalfa seeds are among the most sensitive. Young tomato transplants and broccoli seedlings can suffer measurable setbacks. Even common garden flowers may struggle when exposed to concentrated amounts of fresh, uncomposted grounds. And there is a second danger hidden inside the physical nature of coffee grounds that gets even less public attention. Gardeners have started calling it the crust of death. Coffee grounds are extremely fine in particle size, much finer than most gardeners realize. When they are applied in a thick layer, anything more than roughly half an inch deep, and left exposed to sun and air on the soil surface without being mixed in or covered, they dry quickly and bond together into a dense, almost cement-like mat. This dried crust is hydrophobic. That means the surface actively repels water instead of absorbing it. When rain falls on this sealed layer, or when a gardener stands above it patiently watering with a hose or watering can, the water simply beads up and runs off the surface. It does not penetrate. Not a single drop reaches the soil underneath. Below that invisible barrier, plant roots slowly suffocate, dehydrate, and die of thirst. All while the gardener above believes the bed is being properly watered. The danger is real, it is documented, and it is completely avoidable. Because the solution is simple: the 3 golden rules of application. How to use coffee grounds without risk. Decades of composting fieldwork, agricultural extension research, and controlled scientific study have narrowed the safest and most effective coffee ground practices down to 3 proven methods. Each one reduces the caffeine threat, prevents crust formation, and delivers the full benefit of the 30-day soil transformation without collateral damage. The compost cure. This is the safest method available, and it consistently creates the most powerful long-term results. The process is refreshingly simple. Take each day's used coffee grounds, paper filter included, because the filter is pure cellulose carbon and breaks down beautifully inside any compost pile, and add them to a working compost bin or tumbler. The most important rule is the ratio. Coffee grounds should never make up more than 20% of the total compost volume. Treat them as a green, nitrogen-rich input and balance them generously with brown, carbon-rich materials. Dried autumn leaves, shredded newspaper, torn cardboard, or straw all work well. Inside the pile, the combination of steady internal heat and intense microbial diversity works together to break down and destroy the remaining caffeine over a period of weeks to months. The finished product is a dark, crumbly, nutrient-rich compost amendment that can be spread freely across any garden bed. Flowers, vegetables, herbs, ornamentals, all without risk to seeds, seedlings, or established plants. The scratch and shield. For gardeners who do not keep a compost pile or tumbler, direct soil application can still work beautifully, but it requires care, restraint, and one extra critical step. Start by sprinkling a thin, even layer of used coffee grounds across the soil surface. The layer should be no thicker than 1/4 of an inch, roughly the thickness of 2 stacked coins. Keep the grounds away from the stems and root zones of seedlings, young transplants, and anything that has been in the ground for less than a month. Then take a small hand rake or cultivator and lightly scratch the grounds into the top inch of soil. Blend them into the earth instead of leaving them sitting on top. Finally, and this step is non-negotiable, cover the entire treated area with a generous layer of coarse organic mulch. Arborist wood chips, straw, or shredded hardwood bark all work beautifully. This coarse protective blanket does 3 things at once. It prevents the fine coffee particles from drying into a hydrophobic crust. It helps hold moisture in the soil beneath. And it creates the dark, cool, sheltered conditions earthworms need to safely rise toward the surface and begin feeding. The garden tea. When established, heavy feeding plants need a quick mid-season nutritional boost. Mature tomato vines bending under the weight of ripening fruit. Pepper plants pushing out their 2nd or 3rd wave of blossoms, or squash runners spreading aggressively across the bed. A simple liquid extraction can deliver visible results within days. Place 2 cups of used coffee grounds into a standard 5-gallon bucket of water. Set the bucket outdoors in a shaded spot and let it steep overnight. By morning, the water will have turned a deep, rich amber color as soluble nitrogen, potassium, and trace minerals slowly leach out of the grounds. Strain the liquid, or simply pour it carefully, directing the flow around the base of each plant while keeping it off the foliage. And here is one final discovery that surprised even experienced horticultural researchers. A very diluted coffee solution, around 1 to 2% concentration, basically the weakest possible brew, is highly toxic to slugs and snails. Pouring a thin coffee drench across the soil surface and around the base of hostas, lettuces, strawberries, and other slug-sensitive plants can either drive the pests into full retreat or kill them outright through caffeine poisoning of their nervous systems. It remains one of the few genuinely effective, entirely chemical-free slug deterrents that has held up under repeated peer-reviewed scientific testing. 1 bucket of used grounds, 2 powerful uses, 0 synthetic chemicals. 3 methods, 3 different levels of effort and commitment. Each one reliably turns what the kitchen throws away into something the garden desperately needs. The only requirements are patience and a light, measured hand. The quiet transformation. Every morning, in kitchens across the country, a small paper filter filled with dark, damp grounds gets scraped into the trash without a second thought. It weighs almost nothing. It looks like waste. Nobody stops to consider what it could become if it were given the chance. But 30 days in living soil tells a completely different story. The bacteria wake up. The nitrogen moves through theft and generous return. The physical structure of the earth softens, loosens, and rebuilds itself. The earthworms arrive, dig deep, feed steadily, and leave behind castings richer than almost anything money can buy at a garden centre. And the garden above, quietly, without drama, without spectacle, without a single announcement, begins to change. In ways that only become fully visible over the course of an entire growing season. Not every transformation is loud. Some of the most powerful ones happen underground, in complete silence. They are measured not in minutes or hours, but in patient, unhurried seasons. A handful of coffee grounds scattered across the soil today can become richer earth in 30 days, stronger root systems by midsummer, and a healthier, heavier, more abundant harvest by the time the first cool breeze of autumn arrives. That filter sitting beside the coffee maker right now is not empty. It is full of potential. 30 days of quiet biological power, waiting for nothing more than a handful of garden soil to set it free. Do not throw it away.